These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal, Television for Agricultural Business Decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Bryce Duskett, and thank you for joining us today on Market Journal. Coming up on this week's show, we're talking the cattle markets. We'll be asking Mike Briggs at Briggs Feed Yard all about the Red Hat cattle markets. Also on the show this week, a preview of Husker Harvest Days and what you should expect from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Steve White also standing by to wrap up our coverage of the Nebraska State Fair with a unique story of twins who had an outstanding State Fair. That story is coming up, but first, let's get started with our In the Field update. As today we broadcast near Dorchester, Nebraska, out here at Weber Feed Yard. Behind me is a silage pile. They got started chopping silage, quickly interrupted by 6 inches of rain. That's not the only challenge that Joel and his team have faced. Here's our discussion. Joel Weber is here, and Joel, when we talk about your corn crop in particular, things were looking really good up until August 8th. Then what happened?
August 8th, during the evening, about 4 a.m. actually, we had a windstorm come through, about 90 to 100 mile an hour winds through here, and devastated the area pretty wholeheartedly, right through the middle here to 3 or 4 miles north and 3 or 4 miles south. It was up to 50% green snap.
And then ahead of what you just got started chopping for your feed lot here, and then you got dumped on over the weekend with rain, right?
So in between that August 8th storm, we had another one 2 weeks ago that came through the Dorchester area and devastated, again, some of the same area, but on to the southeast of town, on down towards Pleasant Hill, Wilbur area. And then last weekend, it would have been Sunday evening, right before Labor Day, we got just under 6.5 inches in about 4 hours.
So things are on pause, at least chopping-wise right now. How do things look after getting 6 inches of rain?
Well, the crop that had the original green snap so badly, it was far enough along that it made a good year. It did cut down on the test weight. The cutters are having a devil of a time getting it picked up. The tonnage is good. The first field that we took out was 24 ton. We were expecting or hoping for around 30 ton an acre, but it's slow but sure. We're hoping to get back going maybe tomorrow afternoon and get going. We're maybe 20% cut so far.
A lot of disease pressure in cornfields this year. I know you're dealing with southern rust. How did you combat that?
So that was one of the interesting situations. The day of the original windstorm, we had sprayed fungicide, so it gave us a pre-harvest interval of 21 days, and it definitely prolonged us and when we could get into the field, but we were expecting a huge crop and to dry down naturally as opposed to Mother Nature doing that for us. The beans are getting a ton of disease in it. The corn, we're seeing some sprouting of the ears that are blown over on the ground. We're doing as good as we can with what we've been given.
Not the end of the harvest, or not the end of the growing season that you certainly wanted, but having to pick up the pieces and do what you got. Things will dry out, resume chopping here hopefully soon, I imagine.
Yeah, like I said, we're hoping to get going tomorrow and maybe get wrapped up next week. And with the storms that came through, it did advance our crop, maybe rushed it a little ahead. And we should be right into high moisture corn by maybe the 15th or so. And it's drying down fast, though, so hopefully we can get in front of it here.
Finally, any damage in your feedlot?
We lost a few shades. We have shades in every pen, and not anymore. But the cattle are doing well. We've got some muddy pens that we're combating, but we were in pretty nice shape as far as the pen conditions prior to this storm. So it drained off pretty well, and we're having to pump some water around to make sure all is right, and we can catch another storm if we get it. But by and large, the pens are holding together, and the cattle are in good shape. Certainly a lot of challenges for Joel and his team out here near Dorchester, Nebraska. Not all growing seasons end perfectly. Certainly that's the case
this year. Up next, let's head back out to the Nebraska State Fair as we wrap up our coverage. Out there, the Nebraska State Fair was twice as nice for a Schuyler family that has some seeing double. Steve White reports on a twin win in the livestock arena.
At the Nebraska State Fair, the competition is fierce. Few will pull out of the livestock barns with a banner. For one Schuyler family, the spotlight is twice as bright with a rare twin win.
Congratulations, Allison.
At the Nebraska State Fair, the final drive is the moment of truth. The judge sizes up the best of the best, and then silence breaks into celebration.
It feels really good. I honestly can't even believe it. This is my first year showing goats, so it's just pretty surreal right now.
For Allison Vavracek of Schuyler, winning Grand Champion FFA Market Goat is the payoff.
My whole family, close and extended family, they always support me in anything I do.
Allison's win may have had some seen double. Just 1 week earlier, twin sister Addison won the Market Goat Show in 4-H competition.
It's so crazy. We did not expect any of this to happen. We thought it would be cool, but we didn't really know it was going to happen. I mean, we didn't even think that we would win individually, and then winning back-to-back at the same state fair.
In a contest where only one champion emerges from a barn full of hopefuls, the odds of twin wins are almost impossible. But Addison and Allison made it happen as their mom Corey fought back tears.
Yeah, they're identical twins, and this is our last year showing, and this is our last Nebraska State Fair. So for Addie to get it last week and Allie this weekend is pretty special. It's beyond special, really.
A family that started twinning with matching outfits as babies, now leaving the Nebraska State Fair with matching banners.
They earned it. They work hours every day in the barn. This is their passion. They have the drive for it. They support each other and love each other. And there is no better way that we could have went out at Nebraska State Fair for sure.
Their names join the long list of champions at the Nebraska State Fair, a lasting mark on the show they grew up loving.
It's the best feeling. It's all the hard work we put in and seeing it finally pay off. It just means so much.
Two sisters, 2 weekends, 2 champions.
Yeah, it's super special that I get to do this with her. We're very close, and this is our favorite thing to do together. So it's going to be sad that it's over, but I'm glad that it ended the way that it did.
A double win the Nebraska State Fair won't soon forget.
The story was ending for these girls.
FFA and 4-H, a pair of championship banners going home with the Vavraceks. Reporting, I'm Steve White.
Mom Corey tells us that the Nebraska State Fair is their favorite show, and she couldn't think of a better way to wrap up the girls' career when it comes to showing livestock than that twin win. Thanks for that story, Steve. Up next, let's talk about the markets. This week, we're talking cattle markets in particular. We continue to observe record high prices. Let's get the thoughts from Mike Briggs out at Briggs Feed Yard near Seward, Nebraska. Mike, let's start here going back to July. We've got the lowest inventory levels as reported by USDA back to 1961. My opening question to you is what's stopping producers from herd rebuilding? We've got a multitude of factors, but the drought lessening its grip across the heartland. What is holding us back at this point?
In my mind, the biggest thing right now is the escalation in price. You can't keep a $3,000 heifer to stay at home. You got to sell her. We've had, what, a 5-year drought up until this point, maybe longer in some areas. Those guys have cut down on their cow herd, and they need the money. It's been very expensive. I don't know where our herd building's going to come from. I think a lot of it is going to be, everybody's talking about the size of these cattle. That's not going away. You're going to have bigger and bigger cattle so we can still make the same amount of meat. So somebody will say, well, then that makes you more efficient. That's my answer. I don't think there's going to be any herd rebuilding of any consequence for a while.
Okay. I'd love to dive deeper into that, but let's get to some current events. The Mexican border still closed to live cattle imports. Estimates show that could be around the 800,000 head mark for a year if those cattle still not allowed to enter the U.S. What kind of impact is that having for feed yards, particularly in the South?
Oh, it's tremendous impact on Texas. I mean, I don't even know how those guys stay full at all. That's a tremendous impact, and therefore that's that many less cattle going to market. That's going to have an impact. It's just going to keep this. It's going to keep a bottom under this thing, because we can't break it too far at this point because demand is outpacing supply.
I want to talk margins for a second. Of course, we're standing here at your feed yard. Somebody asked me recently, or said, "Oh yeah, all the folks in the cattle industry have to be pretty happy right now." And for the most part, that's probably a fairly good paintbrush. But
yeah.
Margins, cow-calf, somebody like yourself here in the feedlot industry, all the way to the packer, where do we sit?
Packers have actually gotten themselves profitable, which is amazing to me with the small amount of cattle that we have. Once again, getting underpinned by demand. But this is one of the rare times where everybody in all three segments, ranching, feeding, packing, where we're all making money. I'll probably get 80 calls from ranchers chewing me out, but I think they're making the biggest amount of money and they deserve it. We're doing okay. I'd say margins are in the $500 to maybe, if you got really lucky, $950,000 a head. Those are very extreme. Packer, he's back to making a little bit of money. I don't think he's making hordes of money, but he may be back in the $150 to $200 a head. So that's a pretty extreme margin for them too. So everybody's margins are pretty fat right now.
Let's talk interest rates for a second. Curious your standpoint, or people like you, I won't say necessarily in this boat, but when it comes to wanting to buy cattle for a feedlot in this instance, does the interest rate conversation, is that in play right now?
Oh, it's in play, but the big thing is just the cost of the animal. You know,
Yeah.
I've been back to the banker a couple of times to get over $1 million each time. That doesn't even buy, that buys nothing. That maybe buys 5-6 loads of cattle. That's ridiculous. It is so high right now, just the cost of the animal. Yeah, interest rate is always a factor, but it's just the amount of capital it takes. That's really becoming difficult to swallow, to handle.
You brought up the fact that cattle are becoming heavier and heavier headed into processing. The question is, how large can they handle? And part two of that is, what is the beef supply chain going to look like moving forward? Is it going to be those heavier animals, a mix of the beef on dairy, or do we go back to what we had 5-6 years ago?
That's a great question. The beef on dairy is not going away, because that's turned into a profit center for those dairies. I'm shocked that they all aren't doing it, but they're not. That's going to be a big deal, but that's not as many cattle as maybe a guy thinks. I think I've heard it's only like 3 million head. I need to do more research on it, but that's not going away. That's a good thing. But the genetics on some of these cattle, they can weigh 1,800 pounds easy. Now that's a pretty darn big carcass. I think packers are readying themselves for that. They're going to have to raise their rails again. They're going to have to make some adjustments, because that's where the genetics have gone, and that's what you're going to have to do. If you're not going to have the numbers, you're going to have the pounds, and that's the way it's going to be. You know, we're going to have to adjust some of our working facilities. We can't handle those big cattle. If I get a sick 1,500, 1,600 pound animal, I can barely get him treated because he doesn't fit in my facilities. So there's going to be some retooling have to go on here, because that's how it's going to be. I think you're never getting back, I shouldn't say never. It'll be really hard for me to believe us getting back over 30 million head of cows. And so therefore those pounds have to be replaced.
All right, in closing, here we are in September after the Labor Day holiday. Where do we go from here? Start convincing people to get ready for the holidays by cooking some beef, but we've got a while till we hit Thanksgiving.
Well, it's happening kind of like it always does. We got our last big beef holiday, which is Labor Day.
Yep.
And it started to break. I think we're going to break this thing. It needs to break. It needs to have a reset. We've ran this thing awfully high. You're going to see your beef demand maybe back off here for a little bit. But you know, that's the great thing about Christmas. It's turned into a beef holiday. Everybody wants to have prime rib now instead of turkey, which is awesome. But I think we're going to reset here. I think, those of you, we can break this thing $10. It doesn't mean anything. Now, if we break this thing $20, look out, because now we've wrecked it. We haven't, you know, the way the thing is, this is all demand led. Until we break demand, this thing's not going down. You still have the threat of war. Now you also have the threat of maybe our economy's starting to leak a little bit. So there's all kinds of stuff going on. I think we're going to get a reset. Our shortest numbers don't come until the fourth quarter. So in my mind, that's when we start back up again. But you know, I remember in 2015, I was struggling with the market, understanding why the market was going down, because we were still having smaller and smaller on-feed numbers, and yet the market just kept going down. But we didn't have the demand we have now. So that's what I think. I think we're going to have a reset, and I think we're going to run it higher one more time.
My thanks again to Mike Briggs for letting us stop by, get his 2 cents of what's happening in the cattle market. Certainly a lot of opinions out there of where that market might go. I want to let you know that on next week's show, we'll be visiting about the grain markets with Mark Gold. He's with Stone X, and he works from Chicago. A lot of experience in the grain markets. You won't want to miss that conversation again with Mark Gold on next week's show. More than 1,100 blood pressure checks were completed last year at Husker Harvest Days, but it was a PSA blood draw on the final day back in 2023 that may have saved a farmer's life. Each day at the show, more than a dozen health and medical partners team up to provide cancer screenings, blood tests, and wellness resources, all geared specifically toward farmers and rural families. You can read more about these life-saving screenings in the September issue of the Nebraska Farmer. Back here on this week's show, let's check in on weather now with Nebraska Extension's Eric Hunt. Eric, over the past week, just some beautiful fall weather. What do you have on tap as we gear up for Husker Harvest Days?
Well, thanks, Bryce. Looks like reasonably nice weather for the most part here at Husker Harvest Days this coming week. In terms of sensible weather, we'll have zonal flow here across most of the central United States. We will have some shortwave energy moving through the state Monday into Tuesday, so we'll open up chances for thunderstorms across the eastern half of the state. Late Monday night and early Tuesday morning. WPC is not particularly bullish on much falling from the sky here during this time period. I do think portions of eastern Nebraska, particularly portions of southeastern Nebraska, will have a chance to pick up a quarter to half inch of moisture. And the WPC has generally been underestimating precipitation potential across this portion of the country so far this summer and into the early portion of the fall. A little bit later in the week, we'll see ridging build back into the north central United States. So again, this will keep our temperatures seasonal to probably seasonally warm as we finish out the week. A winter or so is this trough moving into the southwestern United States. Indications are this should make the northeastern turn toward the Front Range and into the High Plains region. So I think it'll open up precipitation chances for the western portion of the state by the end of the work week and probably the entire state by this weekend. As we head toward the weekend or early portions next week, we also may have to watch out for the opportunity for some severe weather across the eastern plains and the western Corn Belt. It's been quite a few years since we've actually had any major severe weather in this part of the country in September. I'm not saying we're going to have that, but it might be something to watch out for as we head about September 14th to 15th. The CPC shows above average being favored here across this entire region. So again, there is some signal for us getting some decent moisture, in some cases some needed moisture across portions of the state as we head through the week after next. In terms of temperatures to finish out the week, probably seasonal early portion of the week. As we head toward the middle late portion of the week, generally going to be above average. I think everybody should spend at least a couple of days in the mid-80s, and in some portions of western and southern Nebraska likely going to be close to 90 degrees on Thursday and Friday. CPC shows above average being favored here across the entire central portion of the country in the period from the 11th to 17th of September. As we get closer to the equinox, there is going to be a possibility of getting a decent cold front moving through the north central United States. If that happens, that would bring back some cooler temperatures, and we probably would start seeing a potential for some frost risk across portions of the state if that were to actually come to fruition. Still a ways out, but we are seeing some signal for that in the AI models right now. Speaking of other things that are a little cooler, we are seeing cooler sea surface temperatures across the eastern and central equatorial Pacific. We are not officially in La Nina, but we are probably headed toward it, particularly if these easterly trade winds keep up like they have been the last 30 to 45 days. So there is increasing confidence we are going to spend the last portion of the fall, certainly going into this winter in La Nina, and that will have some impact on our sensible weather as we head into the wintertime months, which I'll explain in a future episode. In terms of hail in the Panhandle, again, we are probably starting to get to that portion of the year where you start planting it here in portions of the Panhandle. There were places out here that did see some hail in the pre-harvest window. There is research that does show that hail during that pre-harvest window can be very favorable for wheat streak Lozera virus that coming season if you do not take care of the volunteer wheat. So just some of the areas to maybe watch out for where we did have hail during that pre-harvest window earlier this year. In terms of precipitation, didn't see a whole lot of hail across the state. We did have quite a bit of rain, particularly across portions of central and eastern Nebraska. Biggest winner was Weston and Saunders County, which had over 6 inches of rain late Sunday into early Monday earlier this week. Drought monitor, we do have about 17% of the state in drought. That's the lowest we've been in since July 2024. Still have a couple pockets out here, or one pocket out here of severe drought in the Panhandle. But again, this is a remarkable improvement compared to where we were about 4 months ago. In terms of yield projections on corn, now this is the hybrid maize model. This runs this yield model, a couple times during a season based on weather data, and it's showing that just based on the minimum temperatures and some dryness and other issues that we had in the I-states in Ohio, really kind of looking at looking at average to maybe even below average yields being expected in this area. Better than average conditions expected on rain-fed out here. Again, this is not necessarily taking account for disease issues. This is the temperature and precipitation roundup for the week ending August 30th, 2025. Back to you, Bryce.
All right, thanks for that update, Eric. Everybody crossing their fingers for great weather for Husker Harvest Days. Up next, let's get a little crop talk as this year's Soybean Management Field Days wrapped up this year at the Eastern Nebraska Research and Extension Education Center. Participants got a first-hand look at how things were shaping up when it comes to the 2025 irrigated soybean taps competition. There, producers are learning how to do more with less.
The TAPS competition got its start in western Nebraska, primarily dedicated to corn production. Since its inception, the program has expanded to multiple states and even expanded to include an irrigated soybean competition as well. During this year's Soybean Management Field Days, Extension educator Chris Proctor gave participants an update on what researchers have learned from the competition thus far.
Yeah, it's been fun to see how it's grown over time. So if you rewind the clock 9 years ago, it started out at North Platte on corn 2017. Fast forward here, we're in our second year of running on soybeans on the eastern side of the state. And so a year ago, we partnered with Soybean Management Field Days and TAPS. We thought that would be a good way to kind of merge some field component and some ways to get growers involved. But that, the program with Soybean Management Field Days, where you're around the state and engaging with growers, it just seemed like a great partnership. And so the soybean board was really supportive and excited about it. They came alongside of us. And so, yeah, we're now in our second year up here at near Meade running the TAPS program.
We all know field conditions can vary from town to town and county to county. This could mean the difference between a good yield and a great yield. However, competitors in the TAP competitions are all competing on an even playing field.
So one of the I think what's really unique about TAPS is everybody's on the same field, which means they get the same rainfall, same soil conditions. We fix a lot of those factors. And so one of the challenges is if you're comparing your neighbor, or you're comparing 3 counties over what you got versus what they're seeing, there's a lot of factors that can come into play that may or may not help explain, it makes it more difficult to explain those differences. So TAPS, we really try to level that playing field as much as possible. And so your decision is more easily compared or directly compared to another competitor's decision. And I think those side-by-side comparisons, and then you sit at the end of the year in the banquet and you see where you ranked relative to everybody else in that competition. I think that's where a lot of these insights come from, is you level the playing field, you lower the risk of making those decisions because you're not impacting yield on your farm, and now you get to make those side-by-side comparisons, and I think that's what makes TAPS fun.
This year featured nearly double the participants as last year. That means the data that researchers will be able to harvest from this competition will hopefully assist producers in accomplishing more with less in future growing seasons.
Yeah, so we increased from 18 to 30 teams, and so we pulled in a few more participants this year on the TAPS plots this year. We're now under a field where we can manage irrigation across the plots, and so we have a variable rate irrigation system, and so irrigation is a component of the TAPS this year. We've been pretty wet on the eastern side of the state, and so there's not a lot of irrigation has been applied, but that option is there. So I think an efficiency piece, looking at irrigation efficiency, is a component that we're looking at. Again, seeding rate is a big one that we're trying to evaluate, and so really seeing that range of seeding rates from anywhere from 190,000 all the way down to about 105,000, 100,000 seeds per acre were selected. When you look at the emergence data, it flattens out quite a bit, and so I think there's a lot that we can tease out even from the early season data on that. And so we're kind of looking forward to see how all these decisions accumulate. There's a marketing component, so how are people marketing that grain and anticipating those costs, and it all comes together at the end of the year at our banquet.
There's always something new to learn at those extension events. Good stuff there coming from us from the Soybean Management Field Days. If you'd like to learn more about the TAPS competition, visit the website taps.unl.edu. As I mentioned a couple of times here on the show, next week is Husker Harvest Days, and we want to let you know what you can expect from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Of course, they've got the big red building, and Crystal Powers from Nebraska Extension stopped by our studios to share what you can expect from UNL.
Yeah, we really like to focus on Husker Harvest Days because it's a place that brings all of rural Nebraska together. And so this is our way to showcase kind of the breadth of what happens in Extension. We all see county fair and state fair. Well, this is a way to learn more about the home and ag show part of what happens in Extension. So we want people to have kind of that experience of all the different things that Extension brings to the state. This is one of my favorite events of the year. We're really looking forward to seeing everyone. We'll have 10 booths inside the building, and so you can come learn about everything from the latest in ag innovations, tools to help with profitability, which I know is on everybody's mind this year. And then we've got a focus on health and wellness at one of those as well. So if you've got some of those health questions, mental health resources, all those sort of things you can find at those booths within the building. And then if you step outside, we've got our folks from the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources who are there for students or parents who have students who are thinking about what sort of degrees their students might want, careers that they can find in agriculture. So come meet up with them. I think they're going to have a scavenger hunt again this year for the students. So we'll look forward to seeing the students stop by. We'd love to have people come stop and visit with us because there you can learn about the latest research that kind of tests out all these technologies you see across the grounds. You can learn pros and cons of different practices, different technologies, ask your questions where you can get some science-backed advice to kind of go along with what you're seeing across the whole rest of the show. And so we're always there to answer a question or run ideas past. We love getting a chance to talk to everybody that stops in the building. Yeah. And make sure before you leave to stop by the UNL Dairy Store truck is going to be right across from the building. So stop and get some ice cream. And our student quarter scale tractor team is going to have their tractor that they use for pulling competitions out there as well. So there's some fun things to see as well. So stop out at the building and see us all.
Everybody's getting excited about Husker Harvest Days, and we'll be out at the show, our Market Journal's crew, both Tuesday and Wednesday. So if you see us walking around with our cameras, I want to encourage you to stop us. Let us know you enjoy the show. We like hearing directly from you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this week's broadcast, but if you did miss one of our stories, we encourage you to head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe. We post every one of our episodes along with individual stories over there, so you can catch up if you did miss one of them. Hope to see you next time as we broadcast from Husker Harvest Days. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.